All right, welcome back to a little teaching series on the Sermon on the Mount. And in this video, I'm going to cover chapter 5, verses 21 through 47. You may recall in the last section, last video, verse 20, Jesus said that our righteousness must exceed that of the Pharisees. We kind of talked about what that meant. In particular, it really was about the matter of the heart. In other words, righteousness is a matter of the heart foremost, not just a matter of following certain rules. And so in this next section, Jesus is actually going to go on and give some illustrations. You know, one of the great limitations with law is that it can never truly deal with the heart. And there is a great difference between law and ethics. And while law should be based on ethics, laws can never fully encapsulate ethics. In other words, law doesn't deal with the heart. It doesn't change the heart. All it does is regulate external behavior. So you can pass a law that says do not murder, and all that really allows you to do is to lock up those who misbehave, and maybe by doing so discourage people from doing the same kind of misbehavior, but it never actually deals with the heart. Passing a law not to murder doesn't cause people's heart to change. They no longer have hatred in it. And so when you try to just legislate using, when you try to legislate ethics, all you do is create more and more finely tuned and ultimately sometimes even ridiculous laws. And this is part of the trap that the Pharisees fell into, taking some of the commands of God and expanding on it endlessly until it becomes a burden on people. And of course, the real danger is that this obsession causes you to ignore the more important issues of the heart. And so, for example, the command to do no work on the Sabbath became a huge list of what is permissible and what is not permissible by defining in great detail what constitutes work. And it eventually ended up back, and it actually ended up in some silly discussions like, is it permissible to eat an egg that a chicken laid on the Sabbath? And of course, one of the examples that Jesus himself confronted the Pharisees on was they accused Jesus of breaking the Sabbath because he was healing people. Because healing is work, so you can't do it on the Sabbath. And Jesus was like, you're ridiculous. You don't even understand what you're doing here. You've gotten so focused on trying to define what work is that you have actually forgotten what the Sabbath was even about in the first place, which was it was for the benefit of man, not to create all these rules for men to follow. And so, this is one of the reasons why God's prophets of old, they actually prophesied that God was going to do a new thing by writing his laws on the heart. In other words, God was going to deal with the heart, and that there would be not a new set of laws, but that there would be a new kind of law. And that is the law of the Spirit. In other words, God would pour out his Spirit on all mankind, which would transform the heart of man, so that the commands and the laws of God are now contained in the heart by the Spirit. And this is why Paul said the old covenant is the letter, but the new covenant is the Spirit. And of course, laws just end up being they focus on what is prohibited. And why? Because when the heart's not changed, the heart is bent towards selfishness and self-determination. So we are frequently doing things that we shouldn't be doing. And so laws are focused on restricting you from doing bad things. But Paul says that the fruit of the Spirit is love and joy and peace and kindness and self-control and things like that. And he says, obviously you don't need a law against such. In other words, when the Spirit of God is in you producing those kinds of things, you don't have to put prohibitions and restrictions on. Like, who wants to restrict how much love and joy and peace and kindness there is in the world? Okay, and so now Jesus is going to go on to give some examples. And one of the things you're going to notice is that he uses this phrase, you have heard it said, but I say to you. And when he says that, he's not nullifying the law. He's not laying the law aside and giving a new law. He's doing something like this. What he's saying is, listen, you heard it explained this way. Let me explain it to you another way. Or you've understood it to mean this, but it really means much more than that. Okay, and so for example, you have heard the law, do not murder, but I say your heart should not even want to harm someone in any way, even with your words. You should never have that kind of anger in your heart in the first place. You've heard the law say, do not commit adultery. But I say you should have such high esteem for your wife that you don't want to divorce her unless she has given her love to someone else. The law says, listen, keep your promises. But I say you should have such integrity that you don't even have to make a promise because you are always true to your word. You always do what you say you will do, and you never do what you say you will not do. The law says let the punishment fit the crime so that you're not too harsh in your justice. But I say, don't even have need for vengeance at all in your heart. Rather, let your heart show kindness towards those who harm you. The law says, love your neighbor. But I say, do not listen to those who limit this command to only people who act like decent neighbors. But this applies even to your enemies and those who hate you. Does not God show love both to those who love him and to those who hate him? And then he goes on and he says, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. And I'll talk about that in the next video.